let's just dive right in. For years, picking an operating system for your business was, well, it was a no-brainer, right? But some recent changes from Microsoft are flipping that entire idea on its head, especially for businesses right here in the UK. And listen, this isn't just about a new look or a couple of new features. We're talking about a fundamental shift that could seriously impact your data, your security, and yeah, even your bottom line. And that really gets us to the core question that IT leaders are having to ask themselves right now. Is the very foundation of their tech, Windows, actually turning into a business liability? We're going to break down exactly what these changes are and, more importantly, why they matter so much. And make no mistake about it, this is a deliberate, strategic move by Microsoft. It has some really profound implications for how your business handles pretty much everything. We're talking client data, intellectual property, basic employee privacy, and all your regulatory compliance. The old rules, they just don't apply anymore. So let's kick things off with the first huge change, and this one really gets to the heart of IT control, the mandatory link to a Microsoft account. This is the point where you can literally see control starting to shift away from your own IT department and straight into Microsoft's cloud. You know, for the longest time, IT pros and anyone who is a bit tech savvy had all these little tricks and workarounds to create a local account to get around that Microsoft account requirement during setup. But one by one, Microsoft has been systematically shutting down every single one of those loopholes. Now, it's pretty much impossible to set up a new machine without an online account. The message they're sending is crystal clear. The days of a local-only Windows setup are over. Okay, so what does this technical change actually mean for your business? Well, it translates directly into real-world risk. Your devices are now tied to Microsoft's cloud from the second they're powered on. Every single user action is potentially linked to a permanent cloud identity. And that creates a much more complicated and, frankly, challenging landscape for things like GDPR compliance. All right, let's move on to the most controversial feature, because this is where the case for concern really starts to build. If mandatory online accounts were kind of the first warning sign, then the introduction of this feature, called Recall, was a full-blown alarm bell for the entire security community. So in theory, the idea is that it's supposed to be like a photographic memory for your computer. But in practice, it's a comprehensive, moment-by-moment log of every single thing a user does, sees, or types on their machine. And as you're about to see, the way this idea was implemented was deeply problematic. I mean, you only have to look at the feature's own history to see the red flags. It was announced and met with immediate, massive backlash. It was postponed, then it was delayed again. It's been plagued by security and privacy problems from day one. This was not a smooth launch. It was a firestorm that, honestly, Microsoft is still trying to put out. So when security researchers finally got to look under the hood, what they found was just alarming. The data, all those screenshots, were stored in a plain, unencrypted database. It captured absolutely everything: passwords, private messages, banking details, with no effective filtering. And worst of all, they discovered that malware could potentially steal a person's entire computer history without even needing admin rights. It was a goldmine for attackers, built right into the operating system. This quote just nails it. It perfectly captures the consensus from both security experts and the general public. The reaction wasn't just a little cautious, it was overwhelmingly negative. Researcher Kevin Beaumont really hit the nail on the head here. So, faced with all these growing risks in the Windows world, a lot of UK businesses are now starting to look seriously at the alternative. And it's an alternative that's built on a completely different philosophy when it comes to your data and your privacy. And here it is, the core philosophical divide. On one hand, Windows 11 is going all in on a cloud mandatory approach, where your data is processed and linked together on Microsoft servers. On the other hand, Apple's approach, with things like Apple Intelligence, is what they call local first. It does as much of the heavy lifting as it possibly can right there on your device, specifically to protect your privacy. And this difference in philosophy, well, it really comes down to a difference in their business models. For Microsoft, your user data and all that telemetry, it's a valuable asset. It helps fuel their giant ecosystem of services. But for Apple, a company that doesn't rely on advertising, privacy itself has become a key selling point, a major competitive advantage. Now, these aren't just some abstract philosophical differences. They are driving a real, tangible shift in the enterprise market right now. You could say businesses are following the data,
And in a lot of cases, that means moving away from platforms that they now see as a growing risk. And the numbers are really starting to tell this story. Over half of all businesses are now considered Mac-friendly. And even more importantly, actual enterprise deployment has seen some serious growth, up 18% in just the last year. This is not some niche trend anymore. It's going mainstream.
And you know what one of the biggest drivers of this shift is? Employee demand. A staggering 94% of employees say they are more likely to either join or stay with a company that offers them a choice in their work computers. In a competitive job market like this one, that is a number that no business can afford to ignore. And when employees actually get that choice, the data it's incredibly compelling. User satisfaction is sky high. A huge majority, 74%, report having fewer IT issues than they did with a PC. And nearly 80% say they feel more productive. It's a win for the employee, and it's a win for the business.
So at the end of the day, this decision is becoming about so much more than just which operating system you want to deploy. It's really about what values your company wants to align itself with when it comes to data, privacy, and trust.
The changes we're seeing in Windows are really part of a much bigger industry trend, something academics have called surveillance capitalism. These are business models built entirely on collecting, analyzing, and then monetizing user data. And for any business that handles any kind of confidential information, aligning up that model is a fundamental change to your risk profile. What this all means is that the total cost of ownership for Windows is going up, but in ways that you won't see on a licensing invoice. We're talking about new hidden costs, costs for compliance audits, for extra security measures, for employee training, and of course, for all the productivity that's lost to an increasingly intrusive system. And that leaves every single UK business with this final, critical question. When you really factor it all in, the new compliance headaches, the escalating security threats, the impact on employee satisfaction and retention, and this alignment with a data collection business model, what is the true cost of not making a change? That's the strategic conversation that's happening in boardrooms right now.